What is going on, fellow web developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and in today's video we're going to be combining Vue 3 with the Firebase 9 module to create a login authentication application that you can then turn into anything you want. So currently this is how it looks. I've got a simple login and register page. I can register an account, so let's say we go test@test.com, and then we can put in a password. Let's say the password is test1234. And we can hit register, which is going to log us in. Yeah, we know passwords, don't save it. And here you go, you get your home page. You can have obviously set up whatever you wanted in here. You can go to an about page, so you've got two pages. And if I refresh, you can see it automatically knows that I'm logged in and redirects me back to logging in, which is perfect. So if we do want to log out, we're going to have to click on the log out button to actually log us out of the application, so then we can actually register again or log in again. So we logged in with test@test.com, and here we can switch into test1234, the password we put in for the register, hit login, and there you go. You can see it actually logs us in as well once we log in and not just register. This is all using Firebase, so you can see behind the scenes, if I refresh, test@test.com has gone in. It has a user ID, and we're able to pull this out inside of the application. So we're going to be using, obviously, Firebase. We need to set up a Firebase project. So without further ado, let's get started with our project. Okay guys, so I have VS Code open in a blank folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my built-in terminal, and I'm going to run a couple of commands. Now we're going to be using the Vue CLI for this. So if you don't have the Vue CLI, you should go and download it. Or you can do npm -g install. The G is obviously installed this live, and I believe it's at Vue/CLI, just like that, and hit enter. And then once you've done that, you should be able to run Vue create, and then we can give it a name. I'm not going to give it a name. I'm just going to put dot. That's going to tell my terminal to create the files or the folder, the new Vue application, inside the current directory. So I'm just going to hit enter. And that is now going to run and hopefully give us, some things to answer. Generate project and current directory. I'm going to hit enter for yes. It's going to ask us to pick some presets. Now we need to pick a couple of presets here. We need the router. You need to hit spacebar here and then not enter to actually select. So hit spacebar on these, and then we also need Vuex as well. So we're going to install these. I'm going to hit enter. We're going to choose Vue 3 because we want to use some of the composition API. Hit enter. We're just going to hit enter for the rest of this now. This seems all good, and there you go. Now this is going to build our project. Now while this is building, we're going to head over to Firebase. So you need to head over to console.firebase.google.com and create an account if you don't already have one. The odds are, if you have a Google account or even a YouTube account, you already have an account, so you can just sign in with that. So once you're signed in, we need to create a new project, and we need to give it a name. So we're going to name this as Vue Fire Auth YouTube, and I'm going to hit continue. Then it's going to ask us what do we want. You can enable Google Analytics for this if you really want. I'm not going to be using Google Analytics for this one, so I'm just going to hit create project without, and that's going to create our project. Let's head back to our terminal here and have a look how it's doing. It's still running, so I will see you once both of these, or whichever one finishes first. Okay everybody, so Firebase finished first as usual. It's much quicker than how long it takes to, build templates. So here you go, new project is ready. Let's hit continue. That's going to take us in, and now this is the dashboard we can see. Now we need to set up a new application inside of our project. So we need to select for the web because Vue.js is obviously using the web. If you build Android, Apple, or even a Unity application, you can look at the others. Obviously this tutorial is focused on the web, so let's hit enter. And now it's going to ask us for a name. We could just call this our Auth app. Just like that, that's fine. I'm going to hit register app. We don't need hosting, so I'm not going to tick that box. And now that should hopefully set us up. And there we go. So now it's going to ask us to install Firebase and obviously add in our configuration. So we're going to set up a separate file inside of our Vue application to handle Firebase. Now, some of the core changes you're going to notice compared to the last authentication app I did with Vue 3 is that this is going to be using the Firebase version 9 module approach. So Firebase has moved away from having a bunch of namespaces, such as they still use the same importing, but instead of just importing app, you will like Firebase app and then initialize app, or just applicate or Firebase, you're actually going to pull through individual functions. So initialize app, we do get auth, sign in with email and password and stuff like that. We're going to pull them straight out of their respective namespaces, which is great. So let's go back to our terminal. Okay, everybody, so that has now finished. You can see the files on the left side here. We don't have to do anything with any of this really. We just need to go in source and app. We've got our fuse, we have our store, we have the router, we have our components. We don't actually need components or assets for this video, but those folders are there obviously for you guys if you do need them. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Firebase. So let's type npm, if it will actually let me, npm install Firebase, just like that, and that is going to install Firebase. Once we have done that, we're going to need basically this setup here. So I'm just going to copy this, copy a million times. It's the only way to know it's worked for sure. And then once that's done, we're going to create a new file or folder in here called Firebase. And inside of that, we're going to have a file called index.js. This is where we're going to do all of our Firebase functionality. Obviously, if you're using the Firebase database, real-time database, or Firestore, you'll also put them in here as well. But for this one, we're just going to be using the auth, so we're going to be pulling auth through. So let's just delete these comments. We don't need them for now. And the main key bit here is using your Firebase config. This obviously connects you to your Firebase project and application. So obviously make sure these are all correct and you've pulled through the right ones. Don't just copy mine, because this will be deleted once this video is done. So you won't be able to use any of these keys. So yeah, you can see here we're initializing Firebase like you used to. Obviously, I'm pretty sure we used to say Firebase dot initialize app. We used to pull it through from here. But we're going to be using just initialize app, which we pull through. We then need to import, and we're going to say get auth. Now this is a new function or module. You can pull out our Firebase auth, which allows you to get your authentication. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say const auth is equal to get auth, and then we pass through our app here, just so it knows that this is our which Firebase project to connect to, and there you go. So that's set up that. We then want to just export any module we need. So because we've set up our auth here, we're going to pass through, we don't actually need these are actually lies. You have const auth and get auth app there, which is basically going to set up our authentication and allow us to actually do some authentication. So now that is done and Firebase is still installing. Let's go back to Firebase. Let's just click continue to console. And now we want to go into authentication. So you can either click this, or if you don't see this, you can click it on the left here, authentication. And it's going to ask us to get started. So I'm just going to hit get started, and it should take us into the options. So you can see here you have a bunch of different options you can use. You could do anonymous, you could sign in by your phone or email and password. So you type in an email and password. You can also sign in by Google, Facebook, Apple, GitHub, Yahoo, Twitter, Microsoft Games, and even play games if you really wanted to. But for this tutorial, we're just going to sign in with email and password. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on email and password, and we're just going to enable it. And once we've enabled it, we can hit save. You can also do an email link, so you could sign in with just an email address after you've registered. But for now, we're going to just stick to email and a password. Hit save, and there you go. That's now enabled. You can actually edit some settings here, so if you do want to change it later, turn it off, or even just set it up to be an email link, you can. And then there you go. That is our sign-in providers done. You can change your email templates here. So if you have a password reset or anything else for your application, that will be here. If you do want to see a password reset video, I will go over that in a later date. So just let me know in the comments and I will do that. So let's have a look if our Firebase is done. It's installed, and there you go. That looks good. Happy days. Let's clear the console, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run npm run serve to actually start our application. Hit enter, and now this should start a development server. Perfect. So that is now compiled, and it's now running on a server, so we can close that, and here you go. You can see it right here. So you can see we have our default paths. I'm just going to get rid of this and just put names in here because it's just easier to see. So let's just go back and do that. Let's go into here. let's go to our views. I'm going to go home. I'm going to literally delete all of this and all of this. I'm going to change this to main. I like to have a main in there. And let's just put a H1 which says home, just so we know why it is. There we go. Sorry, my tab key is sticking and it's annoying. There we go. So home, let's capitalize it. My caps lock was on, that's why it wasn't working. And then let's go to about, and let's just swap this from being that to just say about, and there we go. That's better. And also change it to main for consistency. Save. And there you go. That's all we're going to use. If we go back, you can see it's just home and about. Perfect. Let's go back to our code. And then let's, we can now close this here. We don't actually need to do anything else in here. So we're going to close the index for Firebase. We're going to close home and about view. They're all now complete. We're going to go in our app here and we're just going to have a look at some of the code. So here, this is all good, but I want to add in just a quick overall margin style to remove some margin just for our styling. So we're going to say 0, padding 0, and box sizing border box, just like that. That's all we're going to do in here for now. We're going to add more to this file later on, but for now we can close it. Next up, we want to go into our store, and I just want to quickly add in user, which will be equal to null by default. We do not need modules, so I'm going to remove that, but we will need actions and mutations. We're going to use actions to commit our mutations to then push to our state. So let's work on a couple of mutations first. So when we call our character, we're going to call set user, which will be equal to state, and then we're also going to pass through the new user object which Firebase gives us, which is then going to say state.user is equal to user. We also need a clear user function, which will basically just clear the user when we need to log out and stuff like that. So it just sets it back to null. And they are the two and only mutations we need for this application for now. And then inside of our actions, I'm gonna create these now. We're gonna have an asynchronous login function which has commit, and then it will also take the new details, so your login details. For now, we're just gonna put a comment in here, well, just a blank comment, just so we know that's there. We then will have the same thing, which will be a logout function, which we're also just gonna have a comment in for now. And finally, we also need a register. So let's just, well, we could just copy this one here, paste, and then just rename this to register, just like that. And then we will obviously add some code to this slightly later, which will allow us to log in, move, and change our, move around. But for now, let's create our next view. Our next view is going to be login.view. And I'm just going to press view. This is the Future plugin, by the way, how I just did all of this in one click. I'm not going to show you the extension, but it's just VETUR. Search it in the extension store and you can get that as well to make you be able to code a lot quicker. So in here, we're going to have a main.login. And I think we're just going to say, we're going to create a section inside of here, which will be called forms, and our forms will have two different forms. We're going to have a form.register, and we do not need this action. We will also have a form.login as well. Again, we do not need the action there, and there you go. There's the two forms. So now inside of the register form, let's just break these away from each other so it looks a bit easier to read. Let's close this as well. So in form.register, we're going to say H2, and we're going to say register. We're then going to have an input field of type, well, we'll just have a plain input and it'll be an email. And then inside here, we will have a placeholder which says email address, just like that. We're then also going to go in here and we're going to use the setup or the composition API to basically just get a ref. So we're going to say const login form, which is equal to a new empty reference object. We're then going to have a const of register underscore form, which will also be equal to a blank ref object. And finally, we're going to have the const of store, which is going to be equal to our actual Vuex store. So let's just save that. And we need to obviously import these. So let's just scroll down. There we go. We're going to say import, and I'm going to import ref from Vue itself, and then we're also going to import use store from Vuex, and that will allow us to obviously use our store. We then want to just return, and we're going to return login. We don't actually need to return the store. I don't know why that's there. Save, and this will probably throw an error because commit to define and never used. Yeah, so one of the errors we're going to get is here. We're just going to comment this all out, only because ESLint throws errors when you have variables and you don't actually use them. It's like, why are you doing that? It's not cool, but you know, that's their problem. And anyway, we're also going to come out store here because it's going to give us the same error. But there you go. We now have our login page there. So we've got email address. And now we're going to, let's just break this down into separate lines for each attribute. And we're just going to say fee model, which will allow us to create a two-way binding on the form element. And we're going to say register underscore form dot email. And then we'll have one more input, which will be type of password, which will have a placeholder of passwords. And then we will also have the fee model, which will be equal to our register form dot password, just like that. Let's break this down as well so it's consistent and looks neat. And there we go. So that is now done. We then obviously need a submit login button. So we're just going to say input. It'll be type of submit with the value of register. Just like that. And again, we'll break it down just so it's consistent and neat. There you go. So we have our three inputs. If we go back to our browser, we actually need to, we can't actually go back to our browser. That's a lie. We need to set up our router. So inside, we close this for now. Inside our router, we need to go index.js, and we need to update this here. So there's two things we need to do. We can just remove this and also remove this. That's fine. So we're getting our two ones, but there's something we need to do here. We need to set these to be have metadata, and we're going to set the meta to requires auth, and we're going to set it to true. So this is how we know which pages we need, which you can't access unless you're logged into. So this is how we're going to set it. So we're setting requires auth, and then we're setting it to true. We then need to set our login page, which will not be our requires auth. Name login. Component will import our login view. And finally, we won't actually have meta for this one because we don't need this, and we don't need to set it to false because it will already be a null object anyway, or an undefined object. And there you go. So that is all we need for our login here, but we will be coming back to this later on to actually add some navigation guards to our home to stop people getting to them without obviously, you know, logging in. But now we can go here. Use store is defined but never used. Okay, so up here where we imported it, let's just comment that out as well. Always getting errors like that. And now we can just say /login at the top here, and you can see there's our register form there, and our navigation is still there, so we can go back. So let's move back in here, and now let's do the same thing. So we're just going to copy all of this. We're going to pull it inside of our login form. I'm going to change this to login. We're going to say that will be the same, and this will just say, we just do that and press D and D, and we can just say login there and change this to a capital L, and there you go. That's now perfect, and that's exactly what we want. And now if we go back, you can see, oh, we need to go to login. And there you go. You can see this here, which is great. So we have our two register and login forms here. We'll style this up a bit later, but for now I just wanted to have it in there so we can actually test it. So let's actually work on some of the Firebase. The Firebase we need to obviously use. So let's go down here and open up use store again, bring back in our store, and we're going to basically create a constant called login, which is going to use async arrow function, which says store.dispatch. Sorry, this does not need asynchronous. I don't know why I put that. And we're going to dispatch an action we call login. And then we're going to pass in login form.value to get the object inside of it, just like that. We then need to create the const of register, which will literally be the same thing but passing the opposite information. And then we just need to pass this in. So we need to say login and register into our return form. We then can go in here and put on our form. So we can come here and say at submit.prevent to stop it from reloading the page. And then we can say register. We can then also go down here and say at submit.prevent is equal to login. And that should now be working. Obviously, these don't actually, well, they do exist, but we commented them out inside of our store because we need to obviously come up with the functionality for those and actually set them up. So let's actually do that now. So let's go back into here. Let's just uncomment these. Save that. Close router for now. And let's go to the top. Let's just say we need to import a few things. We're going to need to import the router from our actual router file. We're going to import Auth from, and we're going to import it from our Firebase we created. And then we also need to import create user with email and password. And we also need to pull out sign in with email and password. And finally, we need to pull out sign out from here as well. So as you can see, let's just break these down onto different lines so it's easier to read. There you go. So what we're doing here is we're importing our router because we're going to need to get reference to the current router on. We need to, and actually be able to change pages. So we're going to need to be able to go to our home page or go back to our login page, depending on which, if we log in or sign out or register. We then need to get our auth we passed through inside of Firebase. That's going to allow us to obviously access our application's authentication and then do the rest from there. We'll also need the sign out, sign in with email and password, and create this. These are all just basically the functions we're going to use. So this is how we use, this is how we register a user with an email and password, and this is obviously how we log in with an email and password. And then that's log out. So let's go down here into login and let's start with that. So this needs to be asynchronous because Firebase uses asynchronous functions. You could also use .then or error and catches. But that's fine. We're basically just going to say const, and we're actually going to just pull out our email and our password. It had it there ready for me, and I messed it up. Email and our password from our details there. That way, basically, we don't have to, you know, do details dot or whatnot. We're then going to do a try and a catch, which will catch an error. There we go. And then let's go in here, and basically, we're just going to say await. Sign in with email and password, and this is actually wrong right now what Copilot is showing you here. We actually need to say auth because it needs to know what authentication to use or what Firebase it connecting to, and that's where auth comes in. We then need to pass through email and password, and that should hopefully be it. Once that's done, we can then catch our error, so we can say error, and we can pass a switch statement in here because we're going to get some error codes, and I'm not going to go through every error code you could possibly get, but these are the main ones. So we can get auth user not found. We're then just going to alert user not found. Now you can do different things with this. You could obviously have a more custom use case, but for now we're going to have wrong password, which will be wrong password break, and then we're going to have a default. So if anything else comes up, we're going to basically log the error message or alert the error message. Actually, you know what? We'll just put something went wrong. Perfect. And then we just need to pass through a curly brace. And if we do have an error, so after our switch, we just want to return because we do not want any more of the function to run. We want to return out of it so people get alerted and it doesn't run anymore. And then, so if it doesn't catch an error, then we can commit set user auth.current user. And we can say router.push, and we can pass through this / here, which is going to move us to our home page. So that's done for that. Let's now do register, which is going to be practically the same thing. Let's just copy this. We're just going to change a few different details. And there you go. Obviously, register will do the same thing down here. It will set our user, it will push, and it will thingy. I need to explain this as well, auth.currentUser. So obviously in our auth we set up in our Firebase, we set up auth, and you can basically check whether the current user currently exists. So you do current user and it will check if there is a currently signed in user via Firebase. So now inside of register, we're just going to say email, password details, try and catch, and instead of sign in, we're literally going to change this to create, I can say there, create user with email and password, auth, email and password, the same thing again, but just different. And we actually need to change our cases. So we're just going to remove this and we're just going to say case or email already in use, alert that. We then have a case of invalid email, so if the email is like just not right and it doesn't work. We've also got operation not allowed, depending on if they have permissions or not to do that. We've got auth weak passwords and break like that. By the way, if you're wondering how I'm doing this without actually typing, it's Copilot. Normally, I wouldn't allow Copilot to auto do all of this, but I know this is correct, so I'm allowing him to have some freedom because it speeds up the tutorial. But there you go, you can see here all of the different error codes you can have. And then once you're done in here, this is all the same. Once you register, we want to log in. We don't want to register and have to log in separately. That's no fun. Why would you want to do that? Whoever does that, you're not nice, you're a meanie. And then in logout, we literally just need to call auth like this, clear user, and then instead of pushing to, let's remove that as well. Instead of pushing to /, we're going to push to login because we want him to be logged out, so we're going to get kicked out of here. And there you go. That is all we need for our functionality here. So let's go see if this works. I don't know if it's going to work, to be honest with you, so let's just go see. Do we have any errors? Refresh, F12. It looks good so far, so let's register an account. Let's say we want to register test@test.com. You know what, let's test an error. Let's just do test@test, and let's just put a password in 123. Register, email invalid, cool, so let's now do .com, and we're going to change this to just test. Register, weak password, perfect, so now it's 1234, which is still a weak password, but you know, it works. So we're just going to hit register, and there you go, it's registered it, we are signed in. However, if we refresh the page, I was about to say, if we refresh the page, we're not going to be logged in anymore, but you can't tell that because we haven't set up any navigation guides. Normally, it would redirect us back to login and say you're logged out. So let's actually fix that. And also, we can now log in, so let's just test that, test@test.com. And let's just put in the wrong password, so let's do 1234 test. Hit login, and it's going to say wrong password. I'm not going to test the rest. I think you guys get it. We're going to say 1234 and hit login. And there you go. It's logged us in. So that's working, but obviously this isn't secure. Anyone can still get to home. Let's put in some navigation guards with inside of our Vue router. So let's go down here. Let's go to here, and let's go into our router. So as I said, we're going to need to do more to our router. So we're going to say router.beforeEach, which is going to basically, we're going to use an arrow function which says to, from, and next. So to is where we're going to, so the route we're going to. So let's say we go from login to home, it will say from login to home. From is obviously from login or from home, wherever you're coming from. And next is where you want to go to next, or just next to move on to the next functionality. Let's just do this. Let's break that down. There seems to have been an extra curly brace there. And in here, we're actually going to need some things. We're actually going to have to import our Firebase auth. So we're going to say import auth from Firebase. And down here, we can now just go in here and we're going to say if our to.path, so we're going to say if our current path is equal to login and our auth.currentUser. So if we're logged in and if we're on the login page, but we're also logged into our user, meaning we're logged into Nuxt, we want to redirect to home because we're logged in. We don't want to be able to go to the login page. We can then return, and that is going to stop the rest of this from running because all we need to do is go to next. We're then going to say if And this is actually perfect. If to.match.sum, which basically say we're going to check if matched sum records have record.meta.requires auth. So we're just checking if it has this here, requires auth true. If this is set to true inside of here, we're going to basically say, we're also going to say, and if we're not logged in, so auth.current user, we're going to return to next, which is going to take us home. And if anything else, we're just going to pass next. So if it doesn't match any of these, we're just going to head over to next like that. So this is all we need to do for this. Let's just close that sidebar. You can see this a bit better. So we have, we're basically just looping through the matched, which will give us the, this here, basically. It gives us this details here, which also includes our meta. And then we check if it's true. And we basically just say auth current user. If it doesn't exist, we're not logged in, we're moving to login. It basically pushes you out. So that's there. So now let's go back here. Let's refresh. Let's try and go home and let's refresh. You can see it redirects us back to login. So here it currently allows us to go to home and about, which we don't want. Something we can do here is obviously disable that URL. So to fix it not redirecting to the correct places, we need to do one of two things. We need to go into our code here and we need to go to our store. We actually need to create a new action called fetch user. So when we're making, we're going to call fetch user, and this is going to get our user on the start. So it's going to check if our user obviously exists or whatnot. We're then going to say auth. And we're going to say on auth state change, which means anytime the user state changes, such as he signs in, signs out, does any of that, we're basically going to call this. And we're going to create an async function, which says user, and it's going to be an arrow function. And then in here, we're going to check if the user is equal to null. If it's equal to null, we're going to commit our user, and we're going to clear user, which basically means we're going to log out our user. We're then going to say else, we're going to commit set user to the user. And finally, we're going to say if router.isReady, and all this does is checks if router is ready and it's active, so it doesn't start too soon. So once it's ready, we're going to say router.currentRoute.value.path is equal to /login. So if we're currently on the login page, we're going to push us into our home page just like that. So that is going to allow us now to come here. We're not logged in, so let's log in. Let's say test@test.com and test1234. Log in, and there you go. So now if we try to go to the home page, we should be redirected back to the login page, which doesn't seem to have happened. Okay guys, so it turns out I'm an idiot. I created this fetch user, but I never actually call it. We don't call it anywhere. That's why it's not working. We actually now need to go to app and obviously set this up with inside app. So inside here, we're going to create a script, just a JavaScript script, a plain one. And we're going to import a couple of things. We're going to import on before mount. So before we mount to our Vuex from Vue, we're just going to say import. And we're also going to say use, we don't need to use router, we need to use store from Vuex. Now inside of here, we're going to have a setup, which we're going to have const store is equal to use store, and then we're going to use store.dispatch fetch user, and then we're going to, well, we're not actually going to return our user here. And also, what we're going to do while we're here is we're actually going to limit our navigation bar. So up here, we're going to say fee if. So we're going to check if our store.state.user exists. And if it exists, then we're going to show this, else we're not going to show it. We're then also going to say button, which says log out. And we're going to say @click is equal to our store.dispatch, and we're going to pass log out here. just like that, and now that gives us our logout button too. So let's go back, and you can see here, now if I tried to go back to login, we should be redirected to our home page, and if we log out and we try to go back to / we get redirected back to login. We can even try to go to the about page, but we're going to get redirected. So now that's all working. I missed a crucial step, and I kept wondering why it wasn't working. That's because I was impatient and tried to get it to work before it was ready. So there you go. So that's now working. So let's style this up and make it look really cool. Let's go to our app here, and we just need to go to the login page. Everything else is fine. And in here, we're going to create our forms. We're going to set this to a display of flex, a min height of 100 VH. We're going to set our form, and we'll give it a flex of 110% to stretch it all the way out. And we're going to also give it a padding of 8 rem, which is like 64, I think, from the top. We're then going to say form.register, and we're going to set the color to white. We're just going to set the background color to an RGB value of 245.66.101. We're going to set the background image. It's going to be we're actually going to do a linear gradient. We're going to say to bottom right. We're then going to get this exact value here. I'm going to pass that in and say 0%. And then finally, we're going to say RGB 189, 28, and 60 at 100%. And now if we save, that should be looking pretty cool. You can see it's on left and right now. It looks pretty nice. Let's close this so we get the full view, and let's zoom in. We're then going to go under and we're going to say H2. We're going to give it a font size of 2 rem. That's going to make it nice and big. A text transform of uppercase, and a margin bottom of 2, not pixels, rem, which is 32 pixels. So a bigger than 2 pixels. We're then going to get our inputs, and we're going to style these to have appearance of none, a border of none, an outline of none, a background of none. We're then going to display this as a block element. We're then going to give it a width of 100%, a max width of 400 pixels. We don't want it too big on bigger screens, and we'll give it a margin of 0 auto to center it as well. We're then going to give it a font size of 1.5 rem, just so it's big enough, so it's slightly bigger. And we will also give it a margin bottom of 2 rem, and some padding of 0.5 rem and 0 rem. Save, let's have a look. There you go, it's looking really bad. Let's make it look a bit not bad. And go under here, we're just going to say input, not, and we're going to say type is equal to submit. So if our input is not a submit thing, we're going to say its opacity is 0.8. And its transition value is going to be 0.4 seconds. We're then going to say input focus and not of type submit, and we're going to set its opacity to 1. Under here, we're then going to go input placeholder, which is going to be color inherit. We then just want to say form.register input not, and we're just going to say not type of submit. Its color is going to be white, but its border bottom is going to be 2 pixels solid white. Let's go back. You can see that started to look pretty good. We then want to go form.login input is type equal to submit. Again, this time we're actually going to style the submit form, and we'll give it a background color of, you know what, let's give it this one. Which one says this is a login? So we're going to say RGB 245, 66, and 101. We then want to give it a color of white, a font weight of 700, a padding of 1 rem, 2 rem, a border radius of 0.5 rem, a cursor of pointer, and a text transform of uppercase. So there you go, you can see the login form is now looking good. We also want to copy this. Let's just paste it here and change this to login. And instead of this, we're going to set this to a hashtag 2C3E50, which is a nice dark color. We're also going to set that to that as well. And there you go. So that's looking pretty good so far. Let's then go down to our form.register. Well, we're actually just going to copy this again. And we're going to change this to register. And now this is actually going to swap around. So we're going to have red text with the white. And that should actually be done. There you go. And I think that is it for our styling. So let's just close this, and close that for now. I think we're good here. Let's go into this. Let's refresh. Let's try and go to home. We can't. Let's put in an email address to register. So let me just use my, let's use my actual one. hello@tylerpots.co.uk. Password is test1234. Hit register, and there you go. That's logged us in. Let's just hit never. We could have styled this, the nav bar. It looks a bit broken, but it's okay. We'll allow it for now. And let's try and go back to the login page. Nope, it's redirected us back here. We go to the about, home, and if we do want to get out back to the login page, we can hit log out. And there you go. Now let's try that again. hello@tylerpots.co.uk. We can then just put in test1234. Hit login, and there you go. So that's now worked great. You can see it's all logged in. We can log out, and that is how our authentication works with the new modular Firebase inside of Vue with the composition API. Hopefully you've learned a lot from that. If you have, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more, then do not forget to subscribe. And also, if you have any questions, or if I went too quickly on something, then just put your questions in the comment section below. Also, if you want to get any help, or you get stuck, or you want to ask some questions but you don't want to put them in the comments, then you can head over to my Discord server. The link is down below. Join us. We're a bunch of friendly people, and there's so many people who will help you out. But for now, guys, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.